Whenever you want to do some operation multiple times, you can copy and paste your code. For example, if I try to print this hello 10 times in my console, I can copy and paste this line 10 times. But in programming, generally, whenever you are copy and pasting, know that you are doing something wrong. Instead of copy and pasting, we have another option. We can use something called loops. There are few types of loops. The first one that I'm going to talk about is a for loop. I'm going to write the syntax for the for loop and then I will talk about it. First of all, we need this for keyword in here. After that, we need a pair of parentheses. Inside the parentheses, we have three statements. At the first one, we are defining a new integer called I. We are initializing it to 0. The second one is our for loop condition, the condition that we want our for loop to continue executing until it's false. For example, in here we want to continue executing this line of code inside this for loop until I is less than 10. And the third statement in here is I++. We are incrementing I by 1 after every time that we execute the line or the code inside the for loop. For example, in here, the initial value for I is 0. We are checking that if I is less than 10, for the first time it is less than 10, so we are going to execute this line of code. After executing it, we are going to increment I by 1. And once again, we are going to loop through this whole circle once again. For the next time, I is 1, I is less than 10, so we are going to execute the line, and after that we will increment I. This loop will continue executing until I is 10. We know that 10 is not less than 10, so the code will be continued after this pair of curly braces. For example, if we had something like this line of code in here, this will be executed. If we try to run our application, we should see hello printed 10 times in our console. Let's do that. You can see that hello has been printed 10 times. But why 10? We can put any number that we want instead of this 10 in here, or alternatively, we can put, let's say, an integer. For example, if I define an integer called a and initialize it by 5, I can pass 5 instead of this 10 in here. And if we try to run our application, the loop will continue executing until I is 5. Also, we can use the I itself inside the for loop as well. For example, in here inside the for loop, instead of printing hello, I can print I. Let's try running that. You can see that the number from 0 to 4 has been printed. For loops are extremely useful and we are going to use them in this course a lot, so make sure to learn everything that I just talked about. The other kind of loops are while loops. Let's clear our code. Once again, I'm going to write the syntax for while loop and then I will talk about it. But before that, let's define a boolean in here. I'm going to call it my boolean. Let's initialize it to true. It's simple English. It means that while some condition has been met, execute the line of code in between the two curly braces. Or I can put another condition in here. For example, let's say until a is less than 4, or whatever you want. But in here I'm just going to say while my boolean is true. If I try to run this code, because this boolean is always true, we will stuck in this while loop forever and we will never exit the program. Let's try running that. As you can see, this hello is being printed indefinitely. We don't want that in our application. We want to create a breakpoint for our while loop. For example, we can set the value of my boolean inside this while loop after the printing to false. This way, after the first time that this code will be executed, the value of this boolean will be changed to false, so we won't execute the code inside the while loop. Let's try that as well. As you can see, hello has been printed only once. As well as for loops, while loops are extremely useful, and depending on different situations, you may want to use while loops as well. But what if you want to make sure that your while loop will be executed at least once? For example, if I initialize this boolean in here to false, because this condition is never met, this while loop will never execute. We can overcome this problem by defining another kind of loop called do-while loop. The syntax for that is to type do and a pair of curly braces and run your code or type your code inside the curly braces. Once again, I'm going to simply print hello, and after the curly braces, put the while some condition is met, and put a semicolon, of course. This way, we are going to make sure that this line of code is being executed at least once, no matter what the condition inside the while loop parentheses is. Let's try running that. You can see that even though the boolean is false, we are executing the code between these do curly braces at least once. Okay, I think that's all we need about loops in Java. Let's have a challenge. But before that, I'm going to introduce a way of receiving users' input. Up until now, if we wanted to define an integer, we could say int a is equal to 5. But what if we want to receive the user's input? For that, we can create an object called scanner. It's a class in Java. We will be talking about classes in Java. For now, we just can't use it. Let's call it scanner is equal to new scanner. We will talk about this new syntax later on, but for now, we just need to pass system.in inside the parentheses of this new scanner. We have seen system.out. It meant that we are outputting something to the console. System.in means that we are going to receive users' input. After that, we can say int a is equal to a scanner dot next int. As simple as that. This way, we will save the user's input, whatever that is, inside this integer. Let's try that by printing something like a is plus a. Let's try running that. We have an application which is waiting for the user's input. For example, if I put 6 in here and press enter, we can see that a is 6. Here is the challenge. I want you to create this simple guess me game. I want you to receive the user's name and say some greeting to him or her. After that, wait for the user to confirm the starting of the game. When the user has confirmed starting, create a random number and save it in an integer called x. We haven't seen creating a random number up until now, and here is how you can create a random number. Like scanner, you can say random, let's call it random, is equal to new random. Once again, this is a new syntax and it will be much clearer in object-oriented session, but for now we are just going to use it and create a random number. I can save my random number inside an integer, for example. Let's call it number is equal to random dot next int. Inside the parentheses of this next int method, you can define the domain of the number that you want. For example, if I put 20 in here, it will generate a random number between 0 and 19. And if I want my number to be from 1 to 20, I can simply add 1 to that random number. After generating a random number, ask for the user to guess a number. then check if user's input is less than your number, greater than the number, or if it's equal to the random number. If it's greater, tell the user to guess smaller. If it's less than your number, tell the user to guess higher. And if it's equal, say some congratulation message to the user. Also, I want you to create a rule so that the user could be able to guess only up to 5 times and not more. If it's more than 5, then show a game over message to the user. It's a simple Java application and I'm sure you can do it by yourself, but if not, that's okay. In the next video, we are going to solve this challenge together. So see you in that next video.